The galaxy had many places filled with wonders, but Vale Station was different. It was a vast ring-shaped structure floating around a calm blue star, shining like a silver crown in space. Ships from hundreds of worlds came and went every hour. Traders, diplomats, scientists, all gathered there for peace and progress. For the first time in history, humans had their own seat among them. Commander Elena Voss stood in the observation deck, her hands resting behind her back as she looked at the endless flow of ships. She had seen many worlds since her first journey beyond Earth, but this view always made her quiet. Each star out there held both danger and hope. Humanity had fought hard to earn its place here, among the great species of the galaxy. Behind her, the soft sound of boots echoed. It was Lieutenant Omar Hale, her young aide. "Council meeting in 10 minutes, Commander," he said politely. Elena nodded. "Thank you, Omar. How's the mood among the delegates?" He sighed. "Tense, ma'am. The Dravik Union is already in the chamber. They're not happy with the mining agreement we proposed." "Of course they aren't," she replied calmly. "The Dravik believe every world near their border belongs to them, even if they've never set foot there." Omar smiled weakly. "Sounds like old Earth politics." "That's what makes us good at this," Elena said with a faint grin. "We've been arguing over borders since we learned to draw maps." They left the deck and entered the long corridor that led to the council hall. The walls shimmered with soft blue lights, and holographic signs floated above doorways in a mix of alien languages. As they walked, other delegates passed by, tall beings with scaled skin, floating spheres of light, creatures with crystal eyes and feathered arms. Some nodded respectfully. Others looked away. Humans were still new here. Just 10 years ago, most species hadn't even heard of Earth. Now humanity had technology that could rival half the galaxy. It made friends and enemies. When they entered the grand chamber, the sound of voices hit them like a wave. The hall was shaped like a circle, filled with tiered seats for each delegation. In the center, a holographic planet rotated slowly. Erebus 3, the world in dispute. Elena walked to the human seat, the flag of Earth shining behind her. As she sat down, the murmurs quieted. Across from her, the Dravik delegation stood, tall, armored reptilian beings with golden eyes and proud faces. Their leader, High Commander Jar Tool, had already activated the speaker unit before Elena even settled in. "Humans expand without permission," Jar Tool said in a deep, vibrating voice. "They build colonies near Dravik space. They steal minerals that belong to our people. This aggression cannot be ignored." Elena rose slowly. Her expression stayed calm. "With respect, Commander Jartul, Erebus 3 lies outside your claimed zone. It was an uninhabited world, open for settlement under council law." "Council law," the alien hissed, "is weak. The stars were not made for law. They were made for strength. You humans crawl into the galaxy with your machines and your words, thinking peace will protect you. But the stars do not care for peace." A low whisper passed through the hall. The other species watched in silence. Elena met Jartul's stare and answered quietly, "Then maybe it's time someone cared." Jartul's golden eyes flashed. "Your kind is dangerous. You grow too fast. You build weapons you do not understand." Elena didn't deny it. "We build because we must. Earth nearly destroyed itself once. We learned what happens when power goes without purpose. We don't seek war, Commander, but we will not be bullied." The hall stayed silent for a moment. Then the council chair, a wise ancient being named Soriel, spoke. "Enough. The council will review the claim to Erebus 3. Until then, no action is to be taken by either side. This session is adjourned." The lights dimmed. The delegates began to leave, their whispers filling the air again. Elena turned to Omar. "Did you see his reaction?" "Yes," Omar said. "He's not done." "I know," she said softly, "and neither are we." Later that night, back in the human quarters, the lights of Vale Station shimmered outside the window like a sea of fireflies. Elena sat at her desk, reading data reports. The Erebus 3 colony was growing fast, over 10,000 settlers, New farms, schools, and factories. They had named their first city New Dawn. It reminded her of her childhood in the old spaceports of Mars, where her parents had told her, "One day, we'll build homes among the stars." Now that dream was real, but dreams had enemies. Her communicator beeped. It was Admiral Raphael Morgan, head of the Earth Fleet. His image appeared as a hologram above her desk, an older man with sharp eyes and a steady voice. "Elena," he said, "I saw the council report. You handled the Dravik well." "Thank you, Admiral, but I don't think it changed anything." "I agree," Morgan said grimly. "We've been tracking unusual activity near the Erebus sector. Dravik ships moving closer. Their scouts pretend to be on patrol, but the pattern is too consistent." Elena leaned forward. "So they're preparing something?" "That's my guess. Keep your eyes open, Commander. If the Dravik act, the Council will call it a misunderstanding, but we both know what it really means." She nodded. "Understood, sir." Before disconnecting, Morgan added, "And Elena, remember what you said in the chamber. We don't seek war, but if they fire first, don't hesitate." The call ended. Elena sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the stars glimmered like 1,000 watching eyes. She wondered if peace was just a quiet pause before the storm. The next morning, a small gathering took place in the human embassy lounge. Scientists, diplomats, and soldiers shared news over warm drinks. A hologram of Earth rotated slowly above the table, blue, calm, and distant. Dr. Mei Chen, one of the lead engineers, joined Elena with a datapad. "Commander, the magnetic rail defense system is ready for final testing. We'll have full deployment in the fleet within 3 months." "That's good news," Elena said. "The Council might see it as a threat, though," Mei smiled softly. "It's only a threat to those planning to attack us." Elena chuckled quietly. Spoken like a true engineer. The conversation lightened for a while, but then Omar arrived with a grim face. "Commander, urgent message from Erebus 3. It's coded and incomplete. They said something about unidentified ships in orbit." Everyone went still. Elena stood at once. "How long ago?" 2 hours. Then the signal cut off. She felt a cold weight in her chest. The room fell silent except for the hum of the hologram projector. Elena turned toward the window where the blue star of Vale Station burned quietly. "Get me a secure link to Admiral Morgan," she said. "Right now." Hours later, she stood, again at the observation deck, watching the stars with narrowed eyes. The reports were unclear. No confirmation yet, no official declaration of attack. But she knew what silence meant. The Dravik were moving. Omar approached quietly. "Commander, the Council wants to meet again tomorrow." "Let them wait," she replied. "Right now, I care about the people on Erebus 3. He hesitated. "Do you think they'll really attack, even after the warnings?" Elena turned to face him, her eyes steady. "The Dravik see us as children. They think we'll break if they push hard enough. They don't understand what kind of children we are." She looked back out at the stars, her reflection faint in the glass. "We grew up on a world that tried to kill us every day. Storms, hunger, wars. But we learned to stand again and again. If the Dravik test us, they'll learn too." The room went quiet again. Only the sound of the engines and the faint hum of Vale Station filled the air. Far away, in the deep cold of space, something was changing. Fleets shifting, shadows moving, old powers trembling at the rise of a new one. And for the first time, the galaxy began to whisper a question that would soon echo in every star system. What will humans do next? Elena didn't know the answer yet, but she felt it, like thunder building behind distant clouds. Something was coming. Something that would change everything. Morning came softly to Erebus 3, painting the twin suns over the green valleys and silver rivers. The colony of New Dawn stood proudly under the sky, metal towers gleaming, airships moving across blue horizons, and children laughing in the streets. It had taken humanity years of hard work to make this world feel like home, Every stone, every farm, every breath of oxygen was a reminder of what humans could do when they worked together. Captain Daniel Reed, head of the colony's defense unit, walked through the main square. His uniform was simple, his face calm but thoughtful. He stopped to greet a group of settlers unloading supplies from a cargo shuttle. "Morning, Captain," said an old miner, wiping his forehead. "Weather's calm today. Feels like a good omen." Daniel smiled faintly. "Let's hope it stays that way." But deep inside, he couldn't shake a quiet worry. The last few nights, their long-range scanners had picked up strange readings. Faint energy spikes in orbit, then silence. At first, they thought it was static from solar storms. Now he wasn't so sure. As he reached the control center, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Asha Verma, met him with a serious look. "Captain, you'll want to see this," she said, handing him a data pad. The screen showed faint blips, small at first, then growing. Daniel frowned. "Ships?" "Yes, not registered. They're approaching fast from the outer system." "How many?" "Hard to say, at least 20. Daniel straightened. "Get me a line to Vale Station, and alert all defense crews." Quietly. The first shadows hours passed as the suns began to set, turning the sky golden and red. Families gathered for dinner, unaware of what was coming. Children ran through gardens while drones hummed overhead, keeping the lights steady. In the control tower, tension grew thicker by the minute. Asha turned to Daniel. "Still no response from Vale Station. Communications are being jammed." Daniel's voice was steady. "Then we follow protocol." He pressed the alarm control. Across New Dawn, a deep siren rolled through the streets, low and haunting. The settlers froze, looking up. Every training drill they had ever practiced suddenly became real. "Evacuate civilians to shelters," Daniel ordered. "Defense batteries on standby." The operators moved fast. Shields around the colony began to hum, forming a faint blue dome that shimmered over the city. Small fighter drones lifted into the air, forming tight formations. Then the radar screens flared. The ships were there. Dravik warships, dark and angular, sliding out of orbit like predators. Their hulls glowed faint red with weapon energy. Daniel's heart sank. He activated the open channel. "This is Captain Daniel Reed of Erebus Colony. Identify yourselves." "You are entering protected space," a voice answered, deep and cold. "This is Commander Karn of the Dravik Union. Erebus 3 is in violation of Dravik territorial law. Evacuate all human presence immediately. This planet is under Galactic Council protection." Daniel replied firmly. "Any attack will be considered an act of war." There was silence. Then Karn's voice returned, sharper. "The Council's words mean nothing. Withdraw or be removed." Before Daniel could answer, the transmission cut, and space lit up. The first strike. The first shot came from orbit, a bright beam of plasma that struck the colony's power grid. The sky turned white for a moment. Then the sound followed, like thunder rolling through the air. "Impact on the southern district," Asha shouted. "Shields holding sheer for now." Daniel gritted his teeth. "Return fire." The colony's defense cannons roared to life, firing bursts of ion energy toward the sky. They hit one of the smaller Dravik craft, tearing a hole in its wing. But the enemy formation barely slowed. Within minutes, plasma fire rained from above. Buildings shook. The ground trembled. Windows shattered. Families ran toward shelters carved into the hills. Robots guided children and elders through the tunnels. The settlers moved fast. They were used to danger, but this was worse than any storm. In the command center, Daniel watched the shield's power levels drop. "We can't hold this for long," Asha said urgently. "Then we buy time," Daniel replied. "Get everyone underground. Keep broadcasting the distress signal. Someone will hear it." Elena's signal far away on Vale Station, Commander Elena Voss stood in the human embassy, watching the faint flicker of a broken transmission on her console. The image was full of static, but she could make out one thing: a sky burning red, people running, and Daniel's voice shouting through the noise, "Under attack." "Erebus 3, Dravik ships need help." Then the screen went dark. Elena's jaw tightened. Around her, officers rushed to decode the fragments. "Can we re-establish connection?" she asked. "No, ma'am," said Omar. "They're jamming the signal. The Dravik are masking their energy signatures, too. The Council will say they see nothing." Elena's hands curled into fists. "Prepare a report to Earth Command. I'll handle the Council myself." Within minutes, she entered the Council hall again. The delegates were already gathered, their faces calm and distant. Elena walked to the center. Erebus 3 is under attack. We need immediate action. The council chair, Sorial, looked at her with slow, blinking eyes. Commander, the Dravik have sent no formal declaration. Are you certain it is not a technical fault? Elena's voice rose slightly. A technical fault doesn't burn cities. You cannot ignore this. Jartul, the Dravik delegate, stood from his seat, his tone smooth but sharp. Commander, your colony violated our border. We merely enforced our law. You call killing civilians law? Elena asked, her voice cold. Jartul leaned forward. You should have stayed on your own world. The chamber filled with murmurs. Elena turned toward the council chair. If the council does nothing, Earth will act alone. Sorial hesitated. Commander Voss, do not... But she was already walking away. Humanity had waited long enough. The fire spreads back on Erebus 3, the colony's shields finally broke. The blue dome flickered, then vanished. Plasma blasts hit the northern sectors, tearing through buildings. In the tunnels below, people could feel the ground shaking. Mothers held their children close. Some prayed softly. Others stared at the ceiling, waiting for the sound to stop. Daniel stayed at the surface, refusing to leave his post. Smoke filled the air, and the control center's roof was half collapsed. Report, he called out. Main grid destroyed. Communications offline. We're running on backups, Asha shouted over the noise. Keep firing at anything that moves, Daniel ordered. We hold the line until help comes. The defense batteries continued their last stand. They fired until their barrels overheated. One by one, they fell silent. Then, through the clouds of smoke, Daniel saw something new. A massive shadow descending. The Dravik flagship. Its hull was black, marked with glowing red lines. It hovered above the colony like a storm. Asha whispered, Captain, they're sending a message. The ship's speakers activated, filling the air with the cold voice of Commander Karn. Humans of Erebus 3, leave now, or face destruction. You were warned. Daniel stepped outside the bunker. His uniform was covered in dust, but his eyes were steady. He looked up at the giant ship and said quietly, We don't leave our home. Then he turned to Asha. Send our final message to Vale Station. Tell them we fought. Asha nodded, tears in her eyes, and pressed the transmitter. To any human ship, Erebus 3 is under attack. We are holding, but not for long. Tell Earth. We stood our ground. The signal burst into space, carrying with it the courage of everyone still standing. The sky turns red minutes later. The Dravik fired again, a blinding column of light that struck the heart of new dawn. The shockwave spread for miles. Dust and fire rose into the sky. Then slowly, silence. From orbit, the Dravik flagship turned away, its mission complete. The world below burned in quiet grief. But even as the last human outpost fell silent, that single message kept traveling. Through static, through interference, across the endless dark and far away on Vale Station, it finally reached the Earth fleet. When the transmission ended, Admiral Morgan stood still for a long time. Around him, officers waited. He turned toward them and spoke in a low voice. They fired on humans. Then he looked out at the stars. The same stars that had watched 1,000 wars and forgotten them all. Signal all ships, he said. We move at dawn. Darkness filled the command bridge of the Earth Fleet flagship, Resolute. The only light came from the soft glow of holographic screens showing movement across the stars. Ships, hundreds of them, were gathering from Earth, Mars, Titan, and the colonies beyond. Each ship carried a name that told a story: Courage, Valiant North Star, Freedom's Edge. They were more than metal and engines. They were a promise that humanity would never again stand silent while its people were hurt. Admiral Raphael Morgan stood in front of the main screen, his hands clasped behind his back. His gray uniform looked sharp, but his eyes were tired. He had seen too many wars, too many losses, yet this time felt different. This time, humanity wasn't fighting among itself. It was standing together. Commander Elena Voss entered the bridge quietly. Fleet count? She asked. 62 ships, ma'am, replied the navigation officer. 4 more on the way from the Luna docks. All armed and ready, Elena nodded. And the new weapon? Morgan turned toward her. Fully operational. The Titan railgun arrays are loaded and tested. We've never fired them in real combat before. She looked at the schematic on the screen. a massive cannon stretching the length of a ship, powered by magnetic coils. "Then we'll make history today," she said softly. Morgan gave a faint smile. "A history or ashes, Commander? Let's make sure it's the first one." The silence before the storm. The fleet drifted at the edge of Dravik space, silent, waiting. The stars around them glittered like watchful eyes. Each ship's engines were quiet, running on stealth mode to avoid detection. On board, crews moved through narrow corridors, checking systems, tightening bolts, calibrating sensors. There was no shouting, no panics, only focus. Every person knew why they were here. In the engineering deck of Resolute, technicians stood around the massive control core that powered the railgun. Blue energy flowed through coils that hummed with soft light. It was beautiful and dangerous, like bottled lightning. Lieutenant Omar Hale stood beside Elena, watching the coils pulse. "It feels strange," he said. "We built this weapon to defend, not destroy. But now," Elena finished for him, "now we use it to protect the living. There's no shame in that." Omar nodded slowly. "Do you think they'll listen if we warn them?" She looked out at the stars. "I hope they do. But I've learned something, Lieutenant. Some people only understand silence after thunder." The last message hours later, the communication channel opened. A transmission came from the Dravik border, cold and mechanical. "This is Dravik Command," the voice said. "You are trespassing in restricted space. Withdraw or be destroyed." Morgan listened quietly. Then he replied, his tone calm but firm. "This is Admiral Morgan of the United Earth Fleet. You attacked the colony of Erebus III. You killed civilians. We request your immediate surrender and retreat from human territories." A pause followed. Then the Dravik voice returned, full of pride. "Humans do not command us. You built your cities too close to our empire. The weak should stay silent." Morgan's eyes narrowed. "Then hear this. We are not weak. We are not silent. If you do not withdraw, we will defend our people." The channel closed. No reply came. Elena looked toward the Admiral. "They're preparing for battle." Morgan gave a slow nod. "Then so are we. Send the signal." Across the fleet, red lights blinked to life. Crews took their stations. Weapons charged. Engines roared. The ships turned toward Dravik space in perfect formation, like a wave of iron ready to strike. The enemy appears. Moments later, the scanners detected movement, hundreds of signatures emerging from hyperspace. The Dravik Armada had arrived. Their ships were long, dark, and spiked, glowing with red energy. Their formation stretched for thousands of kilometers. The bridge of Resolute filled with tension. "They're bigger than expected," Omar said quietly. "Numbers don't win wars," Morgan answered. "Hearts do." The Dravik opened a wide band channel. The voice of High Commander Karn echoed across all frequencies. "Humans of Earth, your defiance ends here. The stars belong to the strong." Elena stepped forward and answered calmly. "Then the stars have room for the brave as well." The Dravik cut the channel, and their fleet shifted into attack formation. "Admiral," the tactical officer said, "they're charging their main cannons." Morgan's voice was steady. "All ships, brace for incoming fire. Begin evasive maneuvers." Seconds later, the blackness of space exploded into color. Plasma beams streaked across the void. Explosions flared like small suns. The human fleet moved in tight, calculated patterns, shields flaring under the assault. "Damage report," Elena shouted. "Minor on the Dauntless. Shields holding across all ships," came the reply. "Good," Morgan said. "Now it's our turn." The railguns speak, the order came, clear and simple. "Power the railguns." On every human ship, coils began to spin. Electric light flowed through the conduits. The air seemed to vibrate with energy. The entire fleet glowed with a pale blue hue, the color of thunder before the storm. The targeting systems locked on. Each railgun was loaded with a dense tungsten slug, small but deadly at near light speed. "Target the Dravik flagship," Morgan said. Elena nodded. "Ready to fire." Morgan gave the order. "Fire." The first railgun on Resolute launched. The recoil shook the entire ship, even through dampeners. A streak of blue light shot across space so fast it was almost invisible. It hit the Dravik lead ship square in the center. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the entire cruiser erupted in silence, torn apart from the inside. The explosion spread like fire through glass. "Direct hit," shouted the weapons officer. Elena watched in awe. "It's working." Across the fleet, railguns fired in perfect rhythm. One after another, glowing trails crossed the stars, and each one finding its mark. Dravik ships broke apart like dust under a storm. The aliens tried to counterattack, but their weapons were slower, less precise. Human ships moved like a living formation, covering one another, adjusting angles. Firing again. The sky became a sea of blue lightning. The turning point, within 15 minutes, the Dravik formation began to crumble. Smaller ships fled. Commanders shouted orders in confusion. The humans pressed forward. Push them back to the edge of their system, Morgan ordered. No pursuit beyond the border. We show strength, not conquest. A Dravik cruiser tried to ram the Resolute, but the ship's railgun fired again, a single bright flash, and the enemy vessel disappeared in a shower of light. Elena turned to the Admiral. They're retreating. He nodded slowly, watching the sensors clear. Good, let them go. Let them carry the story home. For a long moment, no one spoke. The bridge was filled only with the soft hum of systems cooling down. Then one by one, quiet cheers began. Some cried. Some simply stood in silence. Elena exhaled deeply. It's over. Morgan looked at the drifting remains of the battle. No, it's only begun. The galaxy will remember this day. Aftermath hours later, the battlefield was quiet. The human fleet moved slowly among the debris, rescuing escape pods and scanning for survivors. The stars looked calm again, but the memory of the fight lingered in every mind. On Resolute, Elena walked through the medical bay, where wounded crew members were being treated. Some smiled as she passed. One young technician saluted her weakly and said, "We did it, ma'am." She nodded. "Yes, we did. And we'll do it again if we must." In the command room, Morgan stood alone, looking out the wide viewport. The broken remains of the Dravik fleet floated in the distance. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. Old, tired, but proud. Elena joined him quietly. "Do you think they'll come again?" "Maybe," Morgan said. "But next time they'll remember this. They'll remember what happens when someone fires on humans." He turned to her with a faint smile. "And they'll remember the sound of the railgun, far away." In the depths of space on the Dravik homeworld, High Commander Karn watched the recordings of the battle. His ships destroyed, his fleet scattered. He stared in silence at the image of blue light, that unstoppable line that cut through his strongest ship. For the first time, fear touched his heart. "Humans," he whispered. "They fight like they were born for the stars." The message of the battle spread quickly. Across colonies and worlds, humans lifted their heads higher. The galaxy had seen what Earth could do, not out of hatred, but out of love for its people. And somewhere on a quiet station orbiting a lonely sun, Elena looked once more at the stars and whispered to herself, "We are here to stay." The battle had ended, but the void of space remained tense and quiet. The remains of the Dravik armada floated like broken shadows against the stars, glowing faintly from the energy of their destroyed ships. Every human ship in the fleet had been battered, some lightly, some deeply, yet all stood proud, their hulls gleaming under the cold light of distant suns. On the bridge of the Resolute, Commander Elena Voss stood with her arms crossed, staring at the empty expanse of space where enemies had once loomed. The hum of the ship's systems and the faint buzzing of residual energy filled the room. There was no celebration, only a heavy, thoughtful silence. Admiral Raphael Morgan stood beside her, his eyes scanning the holographic sensors. "It's done," he said quietly. "Yes," Elena replied. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge in it. "We won the battle, but this is not the end," Morgan nodded. "No, it's never the end. The galaxy watches us now, and some will admire what we've done. Others will remember the fear." Elena turned to the communications officer. "Status on the survivors?" "Rescue teams are bringing in escape pods, ma'am. About 60% of the enemy crews abandoned ship before the destruction. We are picking them up as prisoners of war, per council regulations." Elena's jaw tightened. "Good. We fight to protect, not to annihilate. Every life matters, even theirs." The bridge fell quiet again. Outside, space stretched endlessly, indifferent to the suffering and triumphs of those who fought within it. The aftermath on Erebus 3 far below. On Erebus 3, the settlers were emerging from shelters and bunkers. Smoke and fire still rose from New Dawn, but people began to rebuild immediately. Children's laughter slowly returned to the streets, and the hum of machinery resumed as repair crews repaired damaged structures. Captain Daniel Reed walked through the city. His uniform scorched, his face covered in dust. He inspected buildings, guided emergency crews, and comforted those who had lost homes. Even in exhaustion, he moved with purpose. A young girl ran up to him holding a small wooden toy. "Captain, is it safe now?" Daniel knelt and smiled gently. "Yes, little one. The danger has passed. We are safe." She smiled back, clutching the toy tightly, and ran toward the rebuilt playground. Reed rose and looked around. Humanity had survived, not because they were stronger than the Dravik, but because they refused to give up. Messages across the stars back on Vale Station. The human fleet's success had become the talk of the galaxy. Holographic channels lit up with reports, transmissions, and messages of both admiration and fear. Many species had witnessed the Titan railgun array in action and realized that humans were not only courageous but dangerously innovative. Elena watched the reports carefully. "The council will convene soon," she said to Omar Hale. "Expect discussions, debates, and probably some threats." Omar nodded. "Do you think the Dravik will try to retaliate?" "Perhaps," Elena said. "But they will think twice now. The railgun is more than a weapon. It is a message." She turned back to the window, watching the stars drift past the station. Every dot of light reminded her of the countless lives depending on human courage and ingenuity. Humanity had crossed a line. They had proven they could stand against any threat. And now, the universe would never see them the same way again. The council reconvenes a week after the battle. The Galactic Council gathered again. The chamber was tense. High Commander Jartul of the Dravik Union entered last, silent and rigid. His golden eyes swept the room, taking in the humans with a mixture of contempt and caution. Elena stood at the podium, her posture calm and dignified. "The attack on Erebus III was unprovoked," she said. "The colonies under human protection will no longer be threatened. The Council must recognize that humanity will defend its people, and it will do so with all means available." The Dravik leader finally spoke. "You fired upon my fleet. Your actions are unprecedented. You have shown strength that rivals old empires." Elena responded without anger. "We did not seek war. But if war comes to our people, we do not hesitate to defend. We fight not to destroy, but to protect life and peace." The Council murmured, considering her words. Several species nodded in approval. Some, older and more cautious, whispered warnings. Yet the message was clear. Humans were no longer to be underestimated. Soriel, the Council chair, finally spoke. "The Council acknowledges the bravery and restraint of humanity in this conflict. The Dravik Union will be sanctioned for aggression against protected colonies. Humans are now recognized as a guardian species, defenders of the frontier and the innocent." Elena allowed herself a small smile. Not of victory, but of responsibility. Humanity had earned respect, and with it came the burden to uphold it. Rebuilding and reflection weeks passed. Humanity focused on repair and recovery. New Dawn was rebuilt with stronger structures and better shield technology. Engineers redesigned buildings to withstand future attacks. The settlers worked side by side with soldiers, creating a city that was stronger, safer, and more united. Captain Reed walked through the streets with a team of children following him. They asked questions about the battle. Not about weapons or violence, but about courage and teamwork. "Why didn't you run?" one boy asked. Reed smiled. "Because running doesn't protect the people you love. We stayed because that is what humans do. We protect each other." The children nodded thoughtfully. In their eyes, a new pride had been born. They were part of a people who could face the stars and survive. A lesson in strength back aboard the fleet, Elena gathered her senior officers. "We have shown what humans can do," she said. "But we must remember, and strength is not for glory. It is for responsibility. Every weapon, every fleet, every decision carries the lives of our people with it." Lieutenant Omar Hale spoke softly. "Do you think the Dravik will return?" Elena's gaze was steady. "Perhaps. But if they do, they will face the same choice, retreat or fall. The galaxy has learned that humans fight with purpose, and when we fight to protect life, not to conquer." Morgan entered quietly, placing a hand on Elena's shoulder. "They won't forget this day," he said. "Nor should they," Elena replied. "They must remember that humanity may be young among the stars, but it is not weak." Hope beyond the battle. In the quiet moments that followed, the fleet moved toward home systems, carrying the wounded, the survivors, and a renewed sense of purpose. Every crew member understood that they were not only soldiers, they were guardians. On Erebus 3, the settlers rebuilt their homes and farms. They planted new crops, repaired schools, and cleaned the streets. Smoke and fire no longer marked the horizon, only the glimmer of hard work, determination, and the promise of tomorrow. Children laughed again. Their play became the music of recovery, and their dreams carried the hope that the next generation of humans would grow up stronger, wiser, and braver. Even in the distant council chambers, whispers of the battle reached other species. The story of the humans and their railgun spread quickly. Some were inspired, others cautious, but all understood one thing clearly: humanity had arrived and it would not bow. A moment of reflection. Late one night aboard the Resolute, Elena stood alone in the observation deck. The stars drifted by, quiet and endless. The memories of Erebus 3, the battle, and the courage of her people weighed heavily on her. Omar joined her quietly. "Do you ever sleep?" She gave a faint smile. "Sometimes. But the stars never sleep, Lieutenant. They watch us and they wait. We must always be ready." He looked out at the void. "Do you think we'll see peace?" Elena's voice was calm, filled with determination. "Yes, peace is possible. But only if we remember this day. The day we stood together. The day we defended the weak. The day the railgun fired to protect life." Omar nodded. "I think the galaxy will remember that too." Elena turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there the Dravik were regrouping, plotting. But humanity had made its mark. They had proven that courage, unity, and ingenuity could defend even the most vulnerable. And far above, in the quiet of space, the Titan railgun arrays sat ready, humming softly. A reminder that when humans fight, they fight for more than survival. They fight for life, hope, and the promise of tomorrow the galaxy would never forget. Weeks had passed since the battle near Erebus 3. The human fleet had returned to their home systems, the wounded were treated, and the colonies were slowly rebuilding. Yet the impact of the conflict extended far beyond the human worlds. Across the galaxy, whispers of what had happened spread like starlight, reaching the farthest systems. Humans, once seen as a minor player, were now recognized for their courage, ingenuity, and strength. At the heart of this recognition was Vale Station, the place where humans had first claimed their seat at the Galactic Council. The station hummed with life. Delegates of many species moved through the hallways, exchanging news and sending reports. Holographic screens displayed updates from Erebus 3, showing the rebuilding efforts and the settlers returning to their daily lives. Commander Elena Voss walked through the corridors with a sense of purpose. This day was important, not only for humanity, but for the message they wanted to send across the stars. She had requested a special session of the Council, one that would officially recognize humanity's role as protectors, as guardians, and as a species that could rise to the challenge of the galaxy. The Council gathers. The Council chamber was grand, circular and filled with light. Species of every shape and size filled the seats. The Dravik delegation entered last, as always, their golden eyes cold and wary. They had been silent since their defeat, but the weight of the battle still lingered in the room. Soriel, the ancient council chair, raised a hand. "Let this session come to order." The hall quieted instantly. Elena stepped forward, her posture steady. The murmurs of the delegates faded as they turned their attention toward her. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," she began, "we gather today not to boast but to report and to remind all of us why we exist together in this vast galaxy." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Weeks ago, Erebus 3, a human colony under our protection, was attacked by the Dravik Union without warning. Cities were burned, families endangered, and lives threatened. The attack was swift, unprovoked, and it tested humanity's resolve." A holographic image flickered above the podium, showing the remains of the Dravik fleet, scattered across the void of space. The council members gasped at the scale of the destruction. Yet Elena did not dwell on the violence. She continued, her voice calm and clear. "We responded not for revenge, but to defend life. Our fleet protected the colony, rescued survivors, and neutralized the threat with precision and care. The Titan railgun arrays proved their purpose, not as instruments of conquest, but as guardians of peace. We acted because we must, and we did so to preserve the innocent." The Dravik Response High Commander Jartul rose from his seat, his voice low but steady. Humans, you have proven your skill. I will not deny it. The attack on Erebus 3 was a test, and the response you delivered was formidable. Elena's eyes met his. It was a test of life, not pride, Commander. And humanity will always fight for life. Shartul bowed his head slightly. The galaxy has taken note. I will report this to my people. His words carried both respect and caution. Humans, you are no longer a species to be dismissed. The council murmured in agreement. Species who had once underestimated humanity now whispered among themselves. Some were inspired, others cautious. But all understood the same truth. Humanity had arrived and the galaxy would remember. Soriel spoke again. In recognition of the courage, ingenuity, and restraint demonstrated by humanity, the Council hereby grants Earth and its colonies the status of guardian species. Guardians are entrusted with the protection of frontier worlds, the defense of the innocent, and the maintenance of peace across the sectors. May your actions continue to reflect wisdom and responsibility. Elena felt the weight of the moment. This was more than a title. It was a responsibility, a promise to all who depended on them. She bowed her head slightly in acknowledgement. We accept this duty and we will honor it. Rebuilding and renewal back on Erebus 3, the settlers worked tirelessly. Families returned to their homes, teachers reopened schools, and engineers repaired farms and factories. Every corner of New Dawn carried the scars of battle, but also the determination of those who refused to be broken. Captain Daniel Reed walked through the city, observing the progress. Children laughed and played in the streets, their joy a sign that life was returning to normal. Workers rebuilt homes, their movements precise and steady. Even as debris littered the ground, the spirit of the people could not be destroyed. Reed approached a small group of settlers clearing rubble from a damaged market. Keep at it, he said. We rebuild stronger than before. An elder nodded. We will, Captain. You showed us that humans can survive anything. Reed smiled faintly. We didn't survive because of strength alone. We survived because we stood together. Remember that. Together, we are unstoppable. Recognition across the stars. News of humanity's victory reached countless worlds. On distant planets, species gathered in their own chambers and living rooms to watch transmissions of the battle and the aftermath. The story was clear. Humans were no longer inexperienced newcomers. They were a force to be respected, a people who fought for life and the protection of the innocent. Even those who had once looked down on humans reconsidered their assumptions. Leaders and diplomats took note of Earth's new position. Traders and explorers whispered of the courage of the human fleet. Young cadets studied the battle as an example of strategy, resilience, and morality in warfare. Elena received countless messages of congratulations from allies and neutral species alike. Some offered aid in rebuilding Erebus 3. Others asked for guidance in defensive technology. The galaxy was taking notice. Humanity's influence had grown beyond what anyone had imagined. Reflections of leadership late one evening aboard the Resolute. Elena stood on the observation deck looking out at the stars. She thought of Erebus 3, of the settlers, of the fleet, and of the lessons they had learned. Omar Hale approached quietly. Commander, the galaxy will never be the same after this. They'll remember humanity for centuries. Elena turned to him, her gaze steady. And we must remember it too. Strength is not enough. We must guide it with wisdom, with compassion, and with the determination to protect life. Omar nodded. Do you think the Dravik will ever try again? Perhaps, Elena said softly. But next time they will know humanity is ready. They will know we fight not for pride, but for survival, for peace, and for those who cannot defend themselves. And that is a power they cannot ignore. Omar looked out at the stars with her. It's inspiring to think we could make such a difference. Elena smiled faintly. We already have, Lieutenant, and we will continue to do so. The settlers' perspective on Erebus 3, life continued to return to normal. Children ran across fields, teachers held lessons under repaired shelters, and families gathered for meals beneath the twin suns. Though the scars of battle remained, the people were stronger for what they had endured. A small group of children asked Daniel Reed about the battle. Captain, were you scared? One of them asked. Reed knelt to their level. Yes, sometimes. But fear does not make you weak. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is what you do when fear is in front of you. The children nodded thoughtfully. One whispered, I want to be brave like you when I grow up." Reed smiled. "And you will be. Every human has the chance to be brave if they stand together and protect what matters." A message to the galaxy across space. A message was sent from Vale Station to every corner of human-influenced systems. It was simple, clear, and strong. Humanity will defend life. We will stand for peace, protect the innocent, and fight only when necessary. Those who threaten life will face the strength of humans united. It became more than a message, and it was a promise. Across countless planets, humans, settlers, and allies alike understood the responsibility that came with it. The galaxy would remember not only the sound of the railgun, but also the courage, restraint, and determination of humanity. The day the galaxy remembered. Weeks later, in a quiet moment on Vale Station, Elena stood alone once more on the observation deck. She looked out at the endless stars and thought of Erebus III, of the fleet, and of the countless lives that had depended on them. A small voice interrupted her thoughts. Omar Hale, standing quietly behind her, asked, "Commander, do you think this is the start of a new era?" Elena's eyes softened as she looked at him. "Yes, Lieutenant. The galaxy has learned that humans are not just survivors. We are guardians. And from this day forward, every species, every colony, every world will remember what it means to face humanity and still hope for peace."